Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is the end almost of the first month of 2019, which means we are starting to get in a whole bunch of numbers and statistics from 2018, and this is where I'm going today. We are actually going to be talking about net neutrality. Now, I don't necessarily have to dive into net neutrality. I actually tend to be a proponent of it, even though I'm also a bit of a free market person as well. But I find this interesting. Now, net neutrality was basically told to the world that it wasn't necessarily needed by the FCC chairman, Ajit Pai. Now, Mr. Pai said, and I quote from an interview that he did with PBS, "Well, I favor a free and open internet as I think most consumers do. My concern is with the particular regulations that the FCC adopted 2 years ago. They are what is called Title II regulations, developed in the 1930s to regulate the Ma-Bell telephone monopoly. And my concern is that by imposing those heavy-handed economic regulations on internet service providers, big and small, we could end up disincentivizing companies from wanting to build out internet access to a lot of parts of the country in low-income, urban, and rural areas, for example. And I think that is something that nobody would benefit from." So that is pretty much Mr. Pai's position on this, is that if we deregulate, the free market kicks in, competition comes into play, and now basically all of the major corporations, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, take your pick, are incentivized to continue rapidly expanding infrastructure as the demand is increased. This, to me, logically makes sense, but have the numbers actually shown that? Because 2018 is essentially the first year where we're seeing these companies unrestricted from net neutrality since the FCC killed it, and here we go. So if we're looking at this, some of the major providers actually didn't seem to be incentivized to continuously expand. They actually started lowering basically what their expenditures were. So in Comcast's case, for example, in 2018, according to reports, they actually spent less in growth by 3%. Now, you're thinking 3% is a small number. As of this morning, Comcast's market cap, and I looked it up, is $161.28 billion. So 3% of that is actually $4.84 billion, or more than the entire GDP of the island nation of Fiji. So Comcast has actually been reining in the cash. Verizon is the same way. They're down roughly $500 million in spending across 2008. And the Wall Street firm of Moffett-Nathanson, sorry if you guys are watching this, they are saying overall capital spending among the nation's 4 largest cable providers, that's Altus, Comcast, Charter, Spectrum, and Cable One, is expected to decline up to 5.8% this year. Now, the 4 major carriers, cellular carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint, also during this period spent $37.3 million lobbying Congress on privacy and net neutrality issues to make sure that they could pretty much do what they want. And we've had a lot of problems with privacy and in terms of location tracking and all of that this year on top of net neutrality. And so it seems to me like basically, well, I think it's a great idea to have competition. Competition isn't really coming, and the major providers are actually holding onto their cash, I'm assuming for future long-term growth, but the expansion, the boom, the competition doesn't seem to be there. And I think one of the reasons why is because competition was able to be redefined by the FCC. Now, an article that came out August of last year in Ars Technica is entitled, "FCC Can Define Markets with Only One ISP as Competitive, the Court Rules." So in other words, the FCC is saying, oh, well, we have one internet service provider in a market, that's competitive. And that obviously is not the case. Competition literally means you need at least 2 people to compete with each other, or 2 organizations. And so we have seen that if we are ranking these as competitive in, let's say, an area that only has one internet service provider, what is their incentive to grow at a rapid pace when they can focus their resources on other areas that do have multiple providers and build out that infrastructure, probably for a larger market base? So is net neutrality needed? You tell me, but I think the numbers are in, and it seems to be the opposite of the logic that was given to us by Ajit Pai. Now, I think for the most part, you know, you can use a free market to expand competition and all that kind of stuff, but in this case, if we are defining competition as a sole entity or a sole provider, That's kind of the antithesis of where this was going. And so tell me what you think about this. Good, bad, ugly. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. Whatever it is, I'd love to hear your opinions. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.